Hey guys, I'm Vanessa, and I want to tell you about my first love. So, do you all remember your first love? Yes, right? I mean, come on. How could you ever forget that first time butterflies in the tummy feeling, hand holding, and that kiss? In the heat of first love, it's easy to believe this will last forever and be a true fairy tale. Only so many first loves lead to a messy breakups that turn into a nightmare. My first love was with a boy named Julian, but you'll have to stick around to find out if our love story was a fairy tale dream or a fairy tale doom. Julian and I started off as friends, best friends. He lived across the street from me and our families were close. We hung out all the time, so much so that our parents teased that we'd get married one day. At the time I thought, no way, but we were just kids back then. Then, when I was about 10, I started to look at him differently. He was so cute and sweet, and I thought about him all the time. He liked me too, right? I mean, he bought me my favorite candy, let me play video games with him, and stuck up for me when these boys from school teased me. And then when I was 15, Julian and I were at our favorite spot. It was a really big old tree in the middle of the park. We went there loads and would lean against the tree trunk, do our homework, listen to music with one headphone, read books, basically anything relaxing. That's when he told me the shocking news. His dad had a new job in Germany, and they were moving there. What? How could this be? I was so surprised, I started crying. I expected him to comfort me, but instead he took out a pocket knife and started to carve on the tree. When he finished, he said, "Ta-da! How does it look?" He'd carve J Heart V in it. Oh gosh, he loved me too. I felt myself turn bright red and didn't want him to see me like that. So looking downward, I went to punch his arm but punched his face by mistake. Oops. Julian held his face and yelled, "Vanessa, what was that for?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Julian, I feel the same," I told him. We both started laughing, then we pinky promised each other that we would keep in touch. He took my hand and told me, "Ness, I'll come back for you, I promise." Then he leaned in and kissed me. And wow, it was truly magical. And then he left. The first few weeks without him were the hardest. I didn't really have any other friends, and I was so bored and lonely. I lived for my video calls with Julian. They were the only thing keeping me going. Telling him stuff that happened at school, such as how my math teacher wore the same hideous floral dress all week, made me feel like he was still there. Things went on like that for a while. It slowly became a habit for us to have a video chat at least twice a week. But then a couple of days after my 16th birthday, things changed. It was a normal Sunday morning and I woke up and went to wash my face. Ah! There were red spots all over my cheeks. I screamed so loudly that I woke everybody up. Even my neighbors had to run over and ask what the scream was about. My parents took me to the hospital and I was diagnosed with a disease called lupus. For all of you who don't know what it is, it's a skin disease that causes rashes or sores. In my case, it was all over my cheeks, the same as what my grandma had. Worst of all, there was no cure. The doctors could only improve the way my skin looked, prevent scarring, and help me feel better overall. This couldn't be happening. Why me? When we got home, I ran right upstairs to my room and stared into the mirror. I'd gone from pretty to ugly in the space of a day. It wasn't fair. And then suddenly my phone rang. It was Julian. Oh no, in all the drama, I'd forgotten about our planned video call. I couldn't let him see me like this. I was so exhausted with all this lupus stuff that I couldn't think of a solution. So I just turned my phone off. I texted him the next day that I was busy so I couldn't FaceTime with him. This carried on for weeks. I just couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. Then he texted me saying that he got the message loud and clear, that I didn't want to be his friend anymore. I texted him back telling him this wasn't the case and I'd just been super busy. But the damage was done. He stopped calling me after that and even unfriended me on Facebook. And that was it. I lost my best friend and also my first love, all because I couldn't cope with my new appearance. Little by little, I was shutting myself off and pushing everyone around me away. I just didn't want anyone to see me like this. Instead, I wanted to hide away from the world. Each day, I'd watch my classmates hang out together and I'd walk off by myself and go to my favorite tree, lean against the trunk, close my eyes, listen to some sad songs, and remember all the good times I had with Julian. This was basically part of my daily routine during the whole 4 years of high school. School finished and I moved away to college. Things got better. I made a few friends who accepted me for the way I looked, and slowly, I started to accept it too. There was this one tree on campus. It looked just like the one back at home, so I went there all the time. One day, I was sitting there reading a book when this guy in a baseball cap started measuring the ground. Then, without looking at me, he said, "Excuse me, can you please move?" I was confused, so I asked, sure, but why? The guy replied,
"Oh, the college is going to build a new cafeteria here, so we have to chop down this tree."
What? They wanted to chop down my favorite spot on campus just so that they could build some stupid cafeteria? No way! Who was this guy anyway? And didn't anyone ever tell him it was rude not to look people in the eyes when talking to them? I gave him a piece of my mind. You architects are all the same. You never give a damn about what you have to destroy to build an ugly building. Leave this tree alone or I'll chop you down. Then I gave him a really dirty look. He just shrugged and carried on measuring. This made me so mad that I kicked him in the butt, causing him to fall onto the ground. His cap fell off and whoa, it couldn't be. Julian? Was that really him? But how? Wasn't he in Germany? Why was he here? And why didn't he recognize me? I mean, I had a different haircut and all, but I didn't think I've changed that much. Or was it because of my lupus? Suddenly, I heard him say,
"What the? Are you mad? What's wrong with you?"
Oh gosh, I'd totally forgotten that he was still lying on the ground. I mumbled out a sorry and immediately rushed back to my dorm. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, all I could think about was Julian. He was so handsome and so tall. How could he have become so good looking? Why did this stupid disease pick me? There was my first love right in front of me after all those years apart. But because of my disease, he didn't know who I was. He blossomed and I hadn't. Maybe it was for the better that Julian didn't recognize me. If he knew this was how I look like now, oh boy, I didn't even want to imagine how embarrassed I would be. So, okay, let's just put it aside for now. What I first needed to do was save my tree. There's no way I was letting the college chop it down. I did some research and found out that the construction would begin in a week. So, I had time to convince as many students as I could to protest against it. And when the day came, I had about 20 people with me. We all held signs and said, "Save the tree" and "Stop the chop." The head of campus, Julian, and the construction workers were trying to make us leave, but we were persistent. At the end, they had to push back the construction dates. One of us remained by the tree at all times, come rain or shine. It was exhausting and cold, but it was worth it when the tree was saved. Then, one day when I was on tree guarding duty, my friend rushed over to me and excitedly told me that the college was going to change the location of the new building. That was such great news. Apparently, Julian had told them that the ground was more suitable in another location. Why would he help us all of a sudden? Did he have a change of mind? I went to class with those questions that kept bugging my mind. And right after school was out, I came over to the tree again, and to my surprise, I saw Julian standing next to it. I walked towards him and asked, "Why did you convince them to change the location of the building? I mean, we really appreciate it, but why the change of heart?" Julian froze for a second and then said, "Hey, it's Vanessa, back with the final part of my story. So, my first love Julian moved to Germany, and due to my insecurities, we lost touch. Then, years later, I saw him at my college campus, measuring my favorite tree to be chopped down. He didn't recognize me, but thanks to him, the tree was saved. He said to me,
"This tree must mean a lot to you, or else you wouldn't have fought so hard to save it. I had a tree like this once," he sighed. "Please continue to protect it."
I felt a pain in my heart. I knew he meant our tree back home. This was all so overwhelming. There I was looking at my first love, but he was oblivious to who I was. and I couldn't tell him because I was terrified that doing so would mean I'd lose him all over again. After that, I didn't see him around campus anymore. Was he living here now? Was he in another city? There were so many questions I wanted to ask him. Then my mom called and told me to come home for the weekend. I arrived there to find her setting out food in the kitchen. On seeing me, she said, "Oh, honey, I have a surprise for you. Julian and his family are back in town, and they're coming over for lunch." What? Oh, no. Why hadn't she told me sooner? I started to panic. What was I going to do now? I rushed to my room and tried to find anything I could use to cover my face. Finally, I found one thing. I heard my mom opening the door for Julian and his family. Then my mom cheerfully shouted, "Vanessa, where are you, sweetie? Come down. Julian is here, and oh my, he's so handsome." But my parents' smile soon disappeared as soon as they saw me coming down the stairs. They literally stood there with their mouths wide open. My mother stuttered, "Vanessa, what in God's name are you wearing?" Yeah, so the only thing I could find to cover my face was a face mask. Worse still, it had a smiling dog face on it. I know I look ridiculous, but at least my lupus was covered. Thinking fast, I muttered, I have a cold and I don't want anyone to catch it." Then I turned and saw Julian and my heart fluttered. He gave me a confused look. He clearly didn't know how to take my accessory. This was so awkward. The last memory he had of me was that I didn't want to video call with him anymore. And that was 5 years ago. Ugh, this sucked. I nodded at him and he nodded back. I caught him looking at me, no doubt because I was wearing that dumb mask. But we didn't actually speak to each other. Luckily, our parents were carrying the conversation. But then, my mom suggested that we should all go out for dinner tomorrow night. Mom, not again! Why didn't she realize that I needed to be pre-warned about these things? Then again, it was so easy for her as she had perfect-looking skin. Luckily, Julian's family were busy tomorrow. Phew! But they suggested having dinner the day after that. Ugh! Dinner was unavoidable, so I had to figure out a way of disguising my face. So, the evening of the dinner, I ran downstairs and my mom glared at me. "Vanessa, what on earth are you wearing? You look like Elton John." So yeah, I was wearing these huge fashion sunglasses. They were the only ones I could find online that I knew would arrive in time. I replied, "This is the new trend now. You're just too old to understand." At the restaurant, Julian and his family gave me the weirdest looks, but I acted like everything was normal and mentioned how good the food was. To be honest, I felt so awkward and just hoped this meal would be over soon. It all got a bit too much, so I went outside to get some fresh air. That's when Julian appeared. At first, he just stood there next to me in silence. It got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore, so I said, "Since when did you come back here?" He replied,
"Since 1 month.
Feeling annoyed, I replied, "Why didn't you call me?"
Ness, you're the one who didn't want to be friends anymore.
Oh no, you got it all wrong. I had some problems, girl problems. I couldn't tell you.
You know, I was really lonely in Germany. You were the only friend I had.
His voice sagged. I replied, "I know, it was stupid of me. I'm sorry, but you're back now. Can we be friends again?" He looked at me for a bit, then smiled and said,
"Seriously, how can I be mad at you now? I mean, look at you."
And then we hugged. I finally had my best friend back, but this wasn't enough for me. Seeing him again made me realize I still loved him even after all these years. My face was the problem. I was convinced that on seeing the real me, he'd run for the hills. After that, Julian and I texted each other loads, but then he asked me out on a date. At first, I was super excited, but then the reality of this dawned on me. I put on my prettiest dress, but as I stood in front of the mirror, all I saw were my bright red cheeks. Maybe I should just risk it. Maybe he would understand and still love me? I mean, it was inner beauty that counted, right? But no, I couldn't do it. So I messaged him back saying that I couldn't go out with him, but he was persistent. In the end, I ran out of excuses, so eventually I had to agree. Okay, so now what? I couldn't keep on wearing face masks and sunglasses. Then I had an idea. What about makeup? I knew it would make my skin worse, but this was an emergency. I put some makeup on, but the rashes were still visible, so I put more and more and more and I resembled Billy the Puppet from the Saw movies. Then there was a knock at the door. Oh no, he was here already! Oh well, I hope he likes horror movies. On seeing me, Julian looked kinda shocked, but he tried to act normal. The restaurant we went to was so nice, but every time he looked at me, he had to try his hardest not to laugh, which in turn made me want to laugh too. Awkward. Afterward, we went for a walk through the park when it suddenly began to rain. So we hurried over to our favorite big tree to take cover. Julian found the carving on the tree and said,
"Do you remember this? That day I promised you I'd come back for you."
Then he turned to me, pulled me towards him. His face came closer and oh my God, was he going to kiss me? But then he stopped and said,
"Oh, Ness, your makeup is floating away. I have a tissue. Let me clean your face."
Wait, what? Oh no, not now. I panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I hid my face from Julian and said, "Don't look at me. Can you please go?" Confused, he asked,
"What? You're acting really weird. What's wrong?"
Then he turned to look at my face. I pushed him away and said, No, I'm fine. I'm just having a girl problem moment." But Julian kept insisting, so I freaked out and ran into the rain. He ran behind me yelling,
"Vanessa, stop!"
I kept running, but then I tripped and my face fell into a muddy puddle. Oh, great! My whole face was covered with mud and my knee was bleeding, so I couldn't stand up. Julian had to help me hobble to the nearest drugstore to buy some bandages and some betadine to clean the wound for me. I sat on a bench feeling like a wounded puppy when he took out a tissue and started wiping the mud from my face. At first, I stopped him, but then he gave me a really serious look, so I let him clean my face. Well, that was it. Julian would finally see my face and he would definitely not want to date me anymore. While cleaning my face, he looked surprised. Then he said,
"Wait a minute. You're going to college in Florida, right? Didn't I meet you like a few weeks ago on the campus? Why didn't you tell me it was you?"
"Because I didn't want you to see me like this." I turned my head away. He looked confused, so he asked,
"Like what exactly? Ness, you're acting so weird."
What did he mean? Was he trying to make fun of me? So I shouted in anger, "It's my face! Don't act like you don't see it. I was afraid that if you saw my face, you wouldn't want to be with me anymore." Julian shook his head and said,
"No, Ness, why would I ever do that? To me, you will always be beautiful. Beauty isn't only about having a pretty face. It's about having a pretty mind, a pretty heart, and a pretty soul."
And then he kissed me on the forehead. Oh gosh, I never imagined that it would turn out like this. Julian was indeed the sweetest person ever, and I should have never have doubted him. Well, Julian and I became an official couple. Loving him makes me so happy. He makes me believe in myself and reminds me that regardless of my lupus, I'm still beautiful. And we will soon get married in a few months. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with him, happily ever after. So, as you can see, in the end, Julian was my first and my last love, which means my fairy tale dreams did come true. But let me tell you this, it's not important if you marry your first love or not. It's important that you marry someone who makes you happy and someone who accepts you for who you are. So, when you find someone like that, then hold on to them, whether this is your first or your 21st love.
I was swaying to the music with the hottest girl at school in my arms. Everything was perfect when suddenly I saw a flurry of red storming toward me, and then the next thing I knew, I was being slapped across the face. Ugh, it was my ex, Rosie. She was looking at me as if she wanted to snap me in half. Okay, so Rosie and me had only broken up yesterday, but that didn't mean she had the right to go full psycho on me. Hey, so I'm Andrew, and I like to think I'm a pretty smart guy. The problem is, I'm a sucker for hot girls. I tend to be blinded by their beauty. The result being, I don't always make the best decisions around them. But I had no idea what drama my weakness for a pretty girl was about to get me into. So it all began with the end-of-term college party. Me and my friends went heavy on the drinks. So when my friend Brad bet me a burger that I wouldn't go and ask Lisa to dance, well, I didn't hesitate in approaching her. Geez, she's so hot and way out of my league. So I was expecting her to tell me to go away. But instead she smiled and let me lead her over to the dance floor. While we were dancing, she whispered in my ear that she'd always liked me. Then, yep, you guessed it, Rosie, my crazy ex, stormed over and slapped me. I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache. Ugh, what was all that shouting coming from outside my open window? I wrapped my bed cover around me and shuffled my way over there to take a look. Lisa and Rosie were yelling at each other. He's mine, not yours. Stay away. He wants me, not you. Deal with it. Oh yeah? Well, maybe we should ask Andrew who he prefers. What's the point? As we both know he'll pick me. I was far too hungover for this, so I closed the window and went back to bed. These girls, they wouldn't stop. For the next few days, they bombarded me with messages and waited for me outside my house. Okay, so most guys dream of two hot girls fighting over them, but trust me, watching them pull each other's hair extensions out isn't as glamorous as it sounds. Thankfully, my prayers were answered by none other than Richie, my awesome brother. He showed up with a ticket for a luxury 2-week cruise trip. He'd booked it ages ago, but then a work thing came up, so the ticket was all mine. Hell yeah! I hugged my brother, grabbed the ticket out of his hand, and started packing. The tricky part was sneaking past Rosie and Lisa, who were still lingering about outside. So I borrowed my housemate's hoodie and baseball cap and pretended to be him to get past them. Result, they didn't even double look at me. Goodbye to my Lisa and Rosie nightmare, and hello to the vacation of my dreams. Ah, this is the life. Trust my brother to book such a lavish place. My room was huge, and it had my very own balcony. There was so much to do here, from the outdoor bar, dozens of restaurants, swimming pool, cinema. I was on my own floating complex. Heaven. The next morning when I woke up in my king-size bed, I took in the sounds of silence. Yup, oh sweet silence, how I've missed you. This was a no-girl arguing zone. I got changed and walked over to the outdoor bar. It definitely wasn't too early for a cocktail. I had a pair of shades on, and that's when I spotted her. Whoa, she was beautiful. I quickly ordered 2 cocktails and began walking toward her. I was about to hand her the drink when I tripped over a sun lounger, and in slow motion I watched the cup fall. I desperately tried to grab it, but nope. Instead, I managed to knock into her back. She let out a yelp and then yelled out, "You pervert! What do you think you're playing at?" I stood there open-mouthed, contemplating if I should dive into the pool to escape this drama or not. Then I looked down at my sunglasses, which in all the action had fallen off. Suddenly, an idea came to me. So I bent down, stretched out my arms, and pretended to fumble around for them. She looked at me for a while, then picked my sunglasses up, placed them in my hand, then said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Here, let me help you." Then she took my arm and guided me across the pool area. I thanked her. And then, with my trusty shades on, I watched her walk away. So she thought I was blind. Yup, this wasn't my greatest idea, but it got me out of a sticky situation with a hot girl at least. Later that night, I went to the buffet restaurant for dinner. I was stacking my plate when I bumped straight into someone and almost dropped my plate. Ugh, it was that hot girl again. I quickly put my shades on, then deliberately turned the wrong way and loudly said, "Oh, I'm sorry." She put her hand on my shoulder and guided me so I was facing her, then said, "Yeah, it's me, the girl from the pool. And it's okay, I should have been looking where I was going. Do you need any help?" I quickly cut her off. "No thanks, it's okay." Then I lifted my plate up to my nose and sniffed it. These prawns sure smell good. She raised an eyebrow at my food-smelling talent, so I carried on pretending to sniff the food as I put it on my plate. And you know what? She wouldn't quit staring at me. Eventually, she walked off. Phew, what a narrow escape. Afterward, I went to the top deck bar to chill out, with yet another cocktail. Then who should walk over but, yup, you guessed it, the hot girl. I immediately looked away from her, but what's this? She walked over to me and sat down opposite me. "Hey, do you remember me?" she asked. Seeing my chance to flirt with her, I replied, "Oh yes, how could I forget someone as beautiful as you are?" "Huh? How do you know that I'm beautiful?" Damn it, I needed to think before I spoke. "Ah, well, it's your voice. A sweet voice like yours can only belong to a beautiful girl." Crisis averted. As after that we started chatting, and oh boy, she's a sweetheart. Do you know that she's an activist for an organization that works hard to guarantee the rights of baby girls born in Africa? I know, amazing. The evening came to an end and she said, "Oh, my name's Bella, by the way." I replied, "Bella, a name as beautiful as your soul. Mine's Andrew." She gave me a nervous giggle. "Well, Andrew, it's getting late, so I suppose I better get back to my cabin." I didn't want the night to ever end, so I blurted out, Whoa, Bella, look at the sky. Isn't it so stunning? She glared at me and then replied, How would you know that? Oops. Of course, I was meant to be blind. I can feel it from the breeze. She gave me a quizzing look, then said, Right. Well, good night. How about we meet at the arcade tomorrow, let's say 10 a.m.? I excitedly agreed, then she left. Another close escape. I really needed to be more careful. Bella, Bella, Bella. I couldn't stop thinking of her. The next day, I'm such a kid when it comes to arcades, I can't help it. My inner child comes out and, ooh, a car racing game. Nope, I was pretending to be blind. So I awkwardly lingered in the foyer and waited for Bella to show up. When she did, she took my arm and guided me through the arcade. She described all the different games machines to me, which I thought was really sweet. Then she led me over to the plushie grabber machine and squealed excitedly. Hoo-hoo, I loved these as a kid. Soon I was fumbling about to slot my money in, adamant I was going to win her a plushie. But wait, I was meant to be blind. So I touched the controls, then closed my eyes. Her laughter said it all. Massive fail. It was all going to be okay until Bella had to use the restroom and instructed me to stay put and wait for her by a shooting game machine, which just so happened to be my all-time favorite arcade game. I rushed over to it as soon as she was out of sight, grabbed a gun, and shot 5 cannons in a row. Then I jumped up and down and whooped in the air. I turned around and saw Bella frowning at me. Oh boy, busted. I tried to explain, but she just shook her head and said, How could you? You're a coward, a pervert, and a liar. Then she ran off. I felt terrible. I tried searching the ship for her, but I couldn't find her anywhere. Feeling bummed out, I ordered a cocktail, then went for a walk across the deck. Suddenly, I heard shouting coming from below me. Huh? What was that? I peered down and saw a man and a woman trying to drag a little girl into one of the safety rafts. Hang on, they weren't alone. Bella was there too. She was trying to pull the little girl away from them. Without even thinking, I dropped my drink and ran over to them. I charged towards the woman and knocked her so hard she almost fell into the sea. The man reached out to steady her, which gave Bella a chance to pick up the kid. Then she grabbed my arm and pulled me away. After that, the bad guys jumped into the raft and sailed away. We returned the girl to her parents. It turns out Bella was on her way to her cabin when she saw a couple in tears as they couldn't find their daughter. So she went looking for her and walked in on the kidnapping. After that, Bella forgave me. Well, I did save the day and all. And we spent the rest of the trip together. Then on our last day, I got down on one knee and asked her to be my girlfriend. And she said yes. I took her back home with me, and as we walked over to my house, Lisa and Rosie ran towards me and started arguing with each other about who I liked more. Oh shoot, I'd forgotten about them. Reading the situation, Bella approached them. Thank God you're here. I assume one of you is his girlfriend, right? There was an accident, and Andrew's blind now, and he really needs someone by his side 24/7. Hearing that, I quickly coordinated with her by waving my arms wildly about. So, which one is your girlfriend, Andy? It's Lisa. Rosie quickly chimed in. No, he's all yours. We only hung out once. Ha, what suckers. I watched them run away. Then Bella and I burst out laughing. After that, I held my arm out to her and let her guide me home, for old time's sake. Lying to her about being blind was a jerky thing to do, but I only did it in the first place because being around beautiful girls makes me so nervous I do dumb stuff. It's just lucky that Bella forgave me, because I think this dumbass may have found his dream girl.
Hi, that's me, Maxine, hiding behind some bushes and spying on a girl. Don't get me wrong, I don't have a crush on her, nor am I a total psychopath. I'm just doing a favor for my mate Damon. But if I'd known how crazy this was all going to get, I'd never have agreed to help him. It all started when Damon fell in love with this girl, Sophie. She had this mysterious charm that made him want to talk to her right away. And he did. She didn't even glance at him. She just walked away. Ouch. I didn't like her one bit. She was so stuck up. But Damon didn't give up that easily. He tried all kinds of tricks to get her attention, even waiting for the bus with her, even though he had a car. Nothing worked, though, and this made him miserable. He begged for my help, but I said, no way. Then he said, "Aw, come on, Maxine, you're a girl, so just befriend her or something. Maybe you can find out what she likes, her fave foods, music, etc. Then I can try to impress her. Please, I'm begging you. I'll even lend you my Nintendo Switch for a month if you agree. You can't say no to that." He had me at that. I'd do anything to get a Nintendo Switch. Fine, it's a deal, but don't blame me if it doesn't work. So after class that day, I searched for Sophie. She was at the bus stop, and I was about to approach her when suddenly she walked away. I decided to follow her, and on the way, she stopped to help an old lady cross the road. Wow, I was surprised. For someone with such a cold face, she had a pretty warm heart. Maybe she wasn't so bad after all. After that, she started walking towards the park, and by then it was starting to get dark. What was she doing? She sat down on a bench in a creepy part of the park, almost like she was waiting for someone. I hid behind a bush so she wouldn't see me, but I was totally freaked out. Suddenly, 2 guys appeared and started talking to her, but they didn't seem like her acquaintances. Oh my gosh, she looked panicked. I had to help. I quickly shouted, "Help! Officer, please help! There are 2 guys bothering us!" Obviously, there was no officer, but it worked. The 2 guys ran off, and I rushed over to make sure Sophie was okay. She was surprised to see me, but then she hugged me and thanked me for saving her. Her whole body was shaking. She must have been terrified. I walked with her back to our dorm, and she told me how she liked to come to the park at night because it was so peaceful. I told her it was clearly dangerous and that she probably shouldn't go alone anymore. Then we exchanged numbers, and after that we became quite close. Close enough. That was a few days later. I told her Damon had a big crush on her and asked if she'd maybe go on a date with him, but she just shook her head and said she wasn't ready. Her eyes looked sad, so I didn't push it any further. Maybe she'd just gone through a bad breakup? I didn't ask her again, but one night I was heading to her dorm for a movie night when I heard 2 people fighting. It was Sophie and some guy, and she was crying. It looked like the guy was about to hit her, so I ran over and said, "Hey, what the heck do you think you're doing? Leave her alone or I'll call the cops." He just laughed at me and said to Sophie, "We're not done yet." Then he stormed off. I asked Sophie if she was okay and who that guy was. Then she told me how he was her ex and that he kept trying to get back together with her, but she wasn't interested. As she told me this, she started to cry and said, "Because of him, I've become so scared and anxious. I'm even too scared to sleep at night." I felt so sorry for her and told her I was here for her and that she could call me anytime. Well, maybe I shouldn't have said that because that's exactly what she started doing. Every night she'd call me and we'd end up chatting until 3 a.m. I was so exhausted, but I wanted to help her. She seemed so anxious all the time. Damon knew we chatted a lot, but he'd stopped asking about Sophie. It seems he'd lost interest and was more worried about me looking like a zombie from The Walking Dead. "You seriously need some sleep, Maxine. Leave Sophie be. She's clearly got issues. It's probably best to not get too involved." Easier said than done, though. But that night I decided not to answer her call. I went to bed early, and when I woke up the next morning, I had about 20 missed calls and 50 texts from her. Oh my gosh! Some of them said she was so lonely and that I'd abandoned her. Then one said, "If you don't pick up, then I will end it all." Okay, this was crazy. I immediately called her, but she wouldn't pick up. I rushed to her dorm, but nobody answered. I was panicking by then and bashing on the door, screaming, "Sophie, open this darn door!" But there was still no answer. I was terrified she'd done something bad, so I asked some students to help me bash down the door, and that's when she opened the door. I've never been so happy to see someone alive. I ran over to hug her, but she looked so annoyed. "What are you doing here? You're making a scene," she said. "What? I was so worried about you. You said you were going to..." But she interrupted me and said, "You need to get some sleep, Maxine. You seem insane." I couldn't believe it. After all those calls and texts, she was the insane one, not me. I didn't feel like yelling back, so I just left her. I needed some space. She tried to apologize to me over the next few days, but I didn't want to be around her. She even texted me saying if I wouldn't be her friend anymore, then life wasn't worth living. I was so tired of her threats, so I just ignored them. And then things got worse. A few days later, Damon and I were studying together when Sophie called me and said she was in the hospital. She told me that she had a brain tumor and they'd just done a biopsy to see if it was malignant or benign. I couldn't believe it. She asked me if I could pick her up, and I said, of course. This was so scary. I told Damon, and he just said, I think she's making it up, Maxine. How could she suddenly have a tumor? You guys just had a fight, and suddenly she's in the hospital? Come on, think about it. I was shocked. Damon, how could you? You're such a jerk. Then I ran off and arrived at the hospital to find Sophie sitting outside wearing a hospital cap. She said her hair had been shaved off for the biopsy, and I asked to see the scar, but she wouldn't show me. She said she'd get a headache if she took it off. I was just glad that she was okay, and gave her a ride home. We made up, and I decided to look after her for the day. She seemed so weak, I couldn't bear to see her suffering. I called Damon to tell him that he owed me an apology and told him about Sophie. And he just said, oh, wow, okay, sorry, hope she's okay then. But then a few days later, he called me and said, listen, Maxine, Sophie's a liar. She didn't have a biopsy. I bumped into her earlier and her cap fell off, and she has a full head of hair under there. No way it would grow back that fast. Why would she lie to me? I didn't get it. I needed to know the truth, so after class I went to her dorm. She opened the door right away, and sure enough, she had all her hair intact. She probably knew Damon had told me, and so hadn't even bothered to keep up the lie. This made me furious. Straight away, I started shouting at her. Honestly, Sophie, what is wrong with you? Why would you pretend to be sick like that? Friends don't do that. Sophie grabbed my hand and said, Maxine, I'm sorry. I was desperate. I only did it because I missed you and wanted you to care about me again. I took it too far, though. Please forgive me. Are you crazy? I screamed. I was worried sick about you. Are you sure there's not something wrong with you? Sophie started grinning in a weird way and said, the only thing wrong with me is that I'm in love with you, Maxine. She wouldn't let go of my hand, and I just stared in shock. What did you say? You heard me. I love you. Then she started to manically laugh and said, I've loved you since the day we first met. I knew you were following me, so I pretended to be in danger so you'd come rescue me. Even my ex-boyfriend was fake. He was just one of my friends pretending. Can't you see? I'm willing to do just about anything to get your attention. If that's not love, then what is? This couldn't be happening. I tried to stay as calm as possible and said, listen, Sophie, I'm flattered. Really, I am. But I'm straight. I see you as just a friend, okay? But Sophie wouldn't give up. She grabbed my hands again and said, how do you know that? You didn't even try to love me yet. Just give me a chance and I'll show you what true love looks like. I tried to let go of her hands, but it was impossible. Sophie grabbed my hands tighter and tighter that it even began to hurt. She looked me in the eyes and, oh my God, it's like I couldn't recognize her anymore. She looked like a crazy person, like a psychopath. Then she began to speak in a really creepy tone. You can't get away from me. You're mine now. I was so scared. I needed to get out of here, so I pushed her really hard that she fell on the ground and I ran like a mad woman out of there until I was back in my dorm. Then I called the police, but by the time they reached her dorm, she was gone. I told them what happened and showed them a photo of her, and you won't believe it. Apparently, I wasn't the only girl Sophie had attacked. There were other girls too. After that night, I was terrified. Everywhere I went, it felt like someone was watching me. Then one evening, after my shift at work, I was walking through the park back to my dorm when I heard someone up ahead. I knew right away it was Sophie, but she wasn't alone. She was with some guys. They spotted me and started heading towards me, but I ran as fast as I could, and luckily the police were just outside the park and went in and arrested them. Sounds like a coincidence, right? Well, it wasn't. Sophie's not the only one who can fool people. I knew Sophie was stalking me, so I told the police, and together we created this plan to catch her, and voila, it worked. Sophie, if you're watching this, I wish you all the best, but let's not meet ever again. That's enough stalking for one lifetime.
Ew, there's a fly in my drink. That's so gross. I'm not paying for this. The kid shoved the cup of lemonade in my hand, then ran away. I just saw you drop it in, and it's not even a real fly. Hey, stop! I shouted after him, but it was too late. He'd gone, and now so had the rest of my customers. Dang it! That was the third time this week, and I knew exactly who was behind this. Michael! I glared over the fence, then charged towards his lemonade stand. Seeing his fake grin, I got even more furious that I poured the cup of lemonade over his sneakers, snatched a dollar bill out of his hand, and then walked off. You see, I'm Amy, and I'm the kind of girl who knows what she wants and gets what she wants. And what I want is for Mike to admit defeat and stop messing with my business. Ugh! I've been on this mission for the past 10 years. I kid you not, it's a literal war between us. It's not fun and games at all, especially now that we have our parents involved in this. You see, my parents and his parents are best friends. In fact, they're so close that I'm pretty sure back in the day, our moms planned their pregnancies together. So me and Mike were born only a week apart. And of course, I was born before him. So there's that. I've won right from the first round. In your face, Mikey. But even worse than the joint birthday parties, shared vacations, and being classmates with him for over a dozen years, I have to live next door to him too. Yep, our parents deliberately moved in next door as they thought raising us together would be fun. They dreamed of us being the best of friends like them. Ugh, no chance. Instead, our disliking for each other began at an early age. Whenever Mike came over, he would throw my Barbie dolls across the room, cut the hair off of them, or wrap my dollhouse in toilet paper. So I retaliated by turning his room into a Lego minefield. Ha! And then I drew flowers on his stupid face while he was napping. Our parents put this down to the cute little things kids did, but nothing about this was cute. This meant war. Our feud heated up once we started to go to school. Everything was a contest between us, from grades, school activities, and even just for the window seat on the school bus. Once, before the summer holidays started, our teachers suggested that over the break, we could have fun helping out our parents with some useful activities, like making homemade goods and selling them in our front yard. Upon hearing that, I caught Mike's challenging look and knew that this meant one thing. Okay then, game on. On the first day, I got up early to set up my lemonade stand out in my front yard. But then I looked to my left, and guess what I saw in dear Mikey's yard? Yep, a lemonade stand. Ugh! Why did he have to be such a copycat? We both seemed to attract lots of customers, but I don't know if it was just me, but it seemed like he was selling more than me. So, over the summer, I used my profits to upgrade my lemonade stand little by little, with eye-catching decorations, promotions, and I even added lemon snow cones to my menu. Finally, my queue seemed notably longer than Mike's. The snow cones were doing the trick. But then, a loud speaker sounded out from next door. Come and try my new iced tea, handmade using my secret recipe. Try it today at an introductory half-price offer. To my utter dismay, most of the people in my queue left and went over to Mike's stand. Ugh, the sneak. Then worse, he started blasting out catchy tunes to catch people's attention. That summer ended, but it had kick-started the entrepreneur dreams in our little hearts. So throughout the next summer breaks, we continued to grow our businesses. I expanded my stand to sell a selection of drinks, snacks, and fast foods, with delivery service too. Once, with my friend's help, we even included a car washing service. Another time, we opened a little creche in our garden so busy parents could drop their kids off for a couple of hours, and also grab a drink to go while they were there. Sounds good, right? But you know what? Whatever I sold, whatever I did, a couple of days later, Mike went and did the exact same thing. And then he had the cheek to accuse me of copying his ideas. Ugh! He was so annoying. Anyway, now at 17, what started out as a fun hobby expanded so much that I opened a mini diner in my garage. At first, it just made sense, as it meant I had customers regardless of the weather. Plus, there were also a few tables outside, and not to brag, but the seats were rarely empty. But then, of course, you guessed it, Mike went and turned his garage into a mini diner too. Ooh! Our diners became well-known hotspots in our neighborhood, and they proved so popular that our parents continued to run them all year round. I was mad that whatever I did, Mike went and did it too. Then, to bug me further, he sent his friends around on a Saturday, and they just sat there taking up all of the seats, while only ordering Cokes. So, I sent my friend Cynthia around to his diner, and she pretended to have food poisoning after eating their food. Then she proceeded to fake gag and ran to the restroom back and forth until the customers all freaked out and left. But then he started to spread negative feedback about our place on the internet, and I did the same in return. Ugh, there's no ending to this fight ever! But I will never back down. I knew Mike had a huge crush on this Stacy girl in his science class, and one time after school, I saw him leading her into his house, probably to bore her senseless, bragging about his lousy business again. So I quickly put on makeup and changed into a cute dress. It's showtime, baby. I went over to Mike's house right on time to see him serve Stacy some of his restaurant's signature dishes. I put on an act and jumped on him. You're cheating on me with this girl? She has nothing on me! How could you? I continued to make a scene, pulling on Mike's hair and screaming, until Stacy looked super awkward and made an excuse to leave. Result! But uh-oh, Mike didn't seem to see the funny side of this. I'd actually never seen him look this mad before. His ears went bright red, then he shouted at me. Amy, competition or not, have I ever interfered in your private life? You've crossed the line this time. He knocked over the drink he'd made for Stacy, then sneered as he walked away. Seeing as you let yourself in, you can let yourself out. So, seemed like I'd won this round, but why didn't it feel good at all? And more like embarrassing. After that, Mike wouldn't even look me in the eye. Whatever. I mean, he would soon mellow down and mess with my business again anyway. Right? Then one day after school, I arrived home to find my parents sitting with some strange, professional-looking man. They called me over to join them. Then the man told me how he wanted to open a well-known fast food franchise in the neighborhood. Upon seeing me looking not really interested in what he was saying, he snidely remarked, Come on, you get what I mean. It'd be ridiculous to have 3 fast food restaurants all in the same place, right? And let's face it, yours is just some fun little kiddie's hobby, which will never go anywhere. Take this. He held out an envelope. And go focus on your grades. Just leave business to the adults. Furious, I snatched the envelope off of him. Yep, it was full of dollar bills. How dare he try and bribe me? What a jerk. So I threw it back at him, then stormed off. Think about it, Amy. The man shouted after me. Don't go making a decision you'll come to regret. The next day, when I arrived home from school, the man was sitting in my diner eating my awesome pancakes. Ugh! Why couldn't he get the hint? I stormed over and told him to leave. He grinned at me, then said, these are good. You know, I think there's room for both of our businesses. All you have to do is take some items off your menu. He gestured to the pancakes. And spread some rumors about Mike's diner's hygiene not being up to scratch to close it down, and I'll let you keep your diner. Seeing my confused look, he added another push. I'm only telling you this because I know you're a smart girl. Smarter than that boy. So, choose wisely. Well, that's true. I am smarter than Mike, but this was crazy. I spent all evening considering it. I mean, there's no way I could compete against a big-name franchise, but this way I stood some sort of a chance, right? But as annoying as Mike was, could I really do this to him? At 2 a.m., I sat up in bed, still so torn about this all. I rushed next door and threw a stone at Mike's window. The light in his room turned on right away. Obviously, he was having a sleepless night too. He looked out and saw me, then he joined me on the porch, and we sat there in silence for a good while. Then he spoke up. "Ames, your pancake tower is amazing. Really?" Sighing, I replied, "Honestly, I drool just thinking about your double-deck burger. But if we don't take those dishes off our menus, I think that man will find a way to close us down." He shook his head. "Well, the Ames I know wouldn't quit that easily, right?" I let out another long sigh. "Yeah, but this is different. They're a big-name franchise. Our small little dining wouldn't be able to hold up for long, sooner or later." Then we fell back into this despairing silence. "I say we can do it. We can do it together." Mike suddenly stood up and pointed at our houses. "We have plenty of space to open up one big diner. Ha! What do you say?" Me and him working together? Would that ever work? But, well, nothing's impossible for big girl Amy. I grinned at him. "Bring it on. Let's fight till our last breath." So, the very next day, we joined forces and started preparing for the opening of the joint diner. Naturally, our parents were, of course, thrilled with the idea. They happily broke down the fences and even built a joint corridor to connect our houses together. We're now officially registered as one business and have all of our food, safety, and hygiene certificates. You know, the boring but official stuff. As for the franchise man, it turns out people in town are loyal to us. So when the story of his dirty tricks spread out, everyone said they'd boycott his restaurant if he ever opened it. So we never heard from him again. Huh, that's karma for you. And what happened next? Well, Mike and I are still running our business together, and it's going pretty well so far. It's a real family affair, with everyone helping out. Actually, it turns out running our own business together is far more fun than competing against each other. Maybe Mike isn't as bad as I always made him out to be, and sometimes I still claim myself to be his girlfriend when I catch a girl lurking around him. I guess he should learn to get used to having only one girl in his life. And thinking about it, I suppose that's always been me.
Hey, get up! Who are you? What are you doing in my room?
What? Excuse me?
Who are you? This is my room.
This guy was totally crazy. He insisted this was his room, even though I'd picked the key up from reception just 2 hours ago.
What do you mean you got the key? I checked in first and just left the key at the reception desk to go out and buy some stuff.
Whatever. I like the beach view here, so I'm staying.
Unbelievable!
Then he pulled out his phone and called reception. Okay, so I'm Liana, and I'm in the tropical paradise of Bali. My dream vacation wasn't off to a great start, thanks to this Charles guy trying to kick me out of my perfect beach view bungalow. Poof!
Okay, now listen. They admit they gave you the wrong key. He pointed at his phone. Now, go back to reception, get the right one, and they'll probably give you a free treatment in the spa or something as compensation.
No chance. I frowned at him. I like this room. How about you leave and go and enjoy a free spa treatment or whatever?
Hell no! He growled at me. I paid for it, so I'm staying put.
After that, we continued to quarrel until I felt a pain in my chest. And the next thing I knew, I'd fainted. Ugh. I guess it was just far too hot here for arguing. He put a pillow under my head and said,
"Miss, you can stop pretending now. Wake up."
I had a feeling he was staring at me, but I didn't move.
Fine. Keep on playing your little pretend games. But I'm not leaving this room either.
Silence. He must have given up. But then I felt a weight next to me on the bed. Without a second thought, I opened my eyes and leaped off the bed. Oh, turns out he wasn't trying to harm me. Instead, he was just sitting on the side and opening his laptop. Oops. He rolled his eyes, told me to go, and then started typing away. I swished my hair back, then said, "In your dreams. Now, I'm off to enjoy this sunny day. When I come back, I don't want to see your face." After that, I left and spent the rest of the day relaxing on the beach. Bali was just so beautiful. At night, I returned to the bungalow and was ready to fall into bed. "Hello," I said as I walked inside. Whoa, he wasn't there. I'd won the battle of the bungalows. I used the last of my energy jumping up and down on the bed and singing out, "He left, I win, he's a loser, I'm a winner." Then I curled up into bed and started to drift off. Smash! I jolted upright. The window had been broken, and lingering at the foot of my bed was a tall, dark figure. I screamed at the top of my lungs, but they lunged forward and covered my mouth with their hands. "Shut up," they whispered in my ear, then pulled their mask off. It was Charles. Confused, I blurted out, "What the? Why did you break the window?" "Quick, grab your things." I pushed him off me and sat there with folded arms. Nice try, but if this is your way of kicking me out, it won't work. I'm not leaving. Suddenly, another man entered the room. Charles placed his mask back on and quickly grabbed the lamp from the bedside table and threw it at the man. I grabbed my bag in a panic, while Charles took something from his backpack and then he led me out of the room. We took the back road out of the bungalow and headed into the forest. "Where are we going and who is he?" I questioned, but he remained silent. "Say something. What's going on?" "Shut up for a minute. Now, I'll take you to the airport to leave this island," Charles grumbled. It was pitch black, and I was trampling through the forest in flip-flops. Ugh! Then, to make it even worse, I tripped over a branch and busted my knee. "Great!" He lowered his back and said, "Get on." I was a bit surprised at first. Maybe he wasn't as mean as I first thought. After a while, he decided we should rest in the forest till dawn. Charles fell asleep the second he hit the ground. I couldn't sleep, and then I thought back on the incident in the bungalow. Thinking about it, I remembered Charles grabbing something from his bag. So I crept over to him and slowly reached for his pocket to see what it was. Suddenly, he grabbed my arm tightly. "Charles, let me go!" I hissed out. My arm started to hurt. "Ouch!" "Look, this is a dangerous business I'm in," he said as he let go of me. "I'm trying to keep us both safe." Okay, I could really see worry in his eyes, so I muttered out, "Fine," then rubbed my arm. After a ridiculously uncomfortable night of zero sleep, he nudged me at dawn and told me to start walking. He took my hand and led me forward. I guess it was nice that he was so focused on protecting me, but, why did he keep looking at his phone? Are we lost?" I asked. He kept his eyes on the screen and shook his head. Then he led me into the other direction, and then another. Yep, we were so lost. After what felt like hours of walking in circles, I slumped down on a rock and pulled a water bottle out of my bag. "Let's just find the hotel," I suggested. "No, we can't. Going back is more dangerous." "But, fine. Can you at least tell me why we're sweating our butts off out here?" "I suppose I've implemented you," he sighed out. "Still, you have to take this to your grave." "I won't tell. Promise." "They're after this." He took a USB stick out of his pocket. "The president of the company I work for is carrying out illegal activities, and this is proof." "Whoa, you're like James Bond!" I smiled as I passed him the water bottle. "Hardly." He laughed. Then he thanked me as he took the water and drank half of it without hesitation, then offered me the rest. He told me he was working for another company and had been sent in to investigate. "So, you're betraying the president?" I asked skeptically.
Kind of. Yes. By the way, I know you just wanted a nice vacation, but I've accidentally dragged you into this mess. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry. I guess this is kinda exciting. But this is the summer getaway with the most insects I've ever had. I swatted a mosquito away. I heard him laugh, but hang on. Why was he all blurry? I slurred out. Is your head heavy? Then I saw him faint in front of me, and a few seconds later, the world turned black. I flickered open my eyes. My head hurt. I was tied to a chair. And so was Charles. There were some scary-looking guys staring at us. Oh no, this couldn't be good. One man walked over to Charles and in a stern tone said,
Charles, hand over the USB, and no one gets hurt. I don't know anything about a USB,
he muttered out.
I don't want to give out threats with her here, but if you insist.
One of the bodyguards walked towards me, grabbed my hair, and pulled it backward.
If you don't find value in her life, just keep it and watch her die. Stop! Leave her out of this! I don't have the USB. I dropped it somewhere in the forest.
Then he turned to me.
I'm so sorry I got you into this.
The man sneered.
Stop being so emotional, Charles. It doesn't suit you.
I was shaking with fear as the man pulled something out from his back and pointed at me.
Last chance, Charles?
He shouted out.
No! It's in her pocket!
He must have snuck it in there when we were in the forest. Did he really believe that I would escape and expose the evidence? Then... Cut! Good job, guys! We should be nominated for an Oscar award after this, I joked, while the men kneeled down and untied me. About time, I said snidely, as I took the USB out of my pocket and began spinning it with my fingers. I peered down at Charles and smirked. Thanks for protecting me and everything, but it turns out I have what I needed.
What? Who are you?
Charles asked in shock. So I put him out of his misery and told him everything. Yeah, I'm the daughter of the company's president, the same said company that he stole top-secret information from. My father asked me to go and find him. The wrong reception key was a setup, and my water bottle has a mild sedative in it.
You don't understand. What your father did was illegal,
he insisted. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, whatever you say. I started walking away.
Please, see for yourself. Look at the USB.
I chewed on my lip. Poor Charles. He was no match for me or my father. Soon, we'd all be on a plane and flying back to the US, and then he would pay for what he did. Well, that was a job well done. So now it was time to relax with a glass of champagne. After all, I deserved it. One simple extraction back home, and my father's company would be saved, and Daddy's little girl would get a pat on the shoulder for yet another job well done. Hooray! But I must say, I kinda pity Charles, being a pawn in somebody else's game. He was really nice, and clever too, but not enough to see all this coming, apparently. I took the USB out of my pocket and stared at it. But what secrets did my father keep? We didn't have anything fishy, right? My father did talk a lot about how hard he worked, and how honestly he conducted himself. So why did he specifically ask me not to peek at the file? A little look wouldn't hurt, right? I know. It's not very good of me to disobey my father, but come on, I'm his daughter. I'm set to take over from him anyways. So consider this a double check, eh? Just to be sure. I regret looking at that file. I truly do, as the truth was unbearable. It turns out, my father had been lying to me from the very beginning. So Charles was actually telling the truth. He was indeed stealing dirty secrets from my father to bring it to the light. Ironic, isn't it? I laughed at him for being so gullible and believed the lies about my father's company, while it was me who got lied to. These truths were hard to swallow. I bore the legacy of a lifetime of scamming and cheating. No, I didn't want to live like that. It was just so wrong. As I delivered both the USB and Charles to my father, I knew what I needed to do. So I held the USB out to my father and said, "Daddy, I looked at it, so I now know everything. Please stop."
Leanna, so your father turned himself in and will be in jail for a while. So, what do you plan on doing with the company?
I was quiet for a moment. This was a big question. Should I continue with my father's business, or put an end to it once and for all? I thought back to the day when I confronted my father.
But Princess, I did it all for you. It's your legacy.
I don't want to live with dirty money, Dad. You've always been my hero, but now I'm just ashamed of you. His face fell, and I saw the sadness in his eyes. Seeing my father like that was the worst feeling in the world. Then it looked like he realized something. My father quietly nodded, handed me the president of the company seal, and sadly left the room. I'm afraid that I would repeat my father's mistake. So, taking a deep breath, I looked the journalist directly in the eyes and assertively said, "After careful consideration, I've decided to close the company." After the conference, I was on my way out of the building when Charles caught up with me and asked,
"Well, Liana, what will you do now?"
I shrugged. I don't know. I suppose anything is possible. Although, I do need a place to stay first. I can't return to mine. I can't bear it.
Well, if you'd like, you could stay with me.
Charles smiled at me. Yeah, I'd like that. Then grinning, I added, "As long as you don't try to kick me out this time, or drag me through a forest." I hate what my father did, but in the end, he did own up to his crimes and is paying the price. As for me, I was just going to take one day at a time and see where life took me. And if that just so happened to involve a certain James Bond wannabe, then so be it. Hey, it's me again, Nancy. Only I'm currently pretending to be my long-lost identical twin, Gabby. After a chance meeting with her, she was now living my life in the countryside, and I was living hers in the city. One snag, I was crushing on her adoptive brother Jaden. But Gabby's best friend Katie also wanted me to set her up with him. What a bummer, huh? Katie insisted that I convince Jaden to tutor her on Saturday. The excuse being she had some super important physics exam. So, with my most enthusiastic voice, I went to ask him to help her. And surprisingly, Jaden found it a great idea.
"You should sit in too. Dad will be so stoked if you manage to get something above an F next time."
Oh wow, Jaden is just the sweetest. I don't get why Gabby complains about him. So, as planned, at 3 p.m. sharp, Katie appears at our door, wearing this flashy, off-the-shoulder dress that would have best suited a nightclub or something. Upon seeing her, Jaden chuckled and said,
"Oh, what's the occasion?"
Katie blushed and smiled back. But before she could speak up, I chimed in. Katie's afraid your physics class would be too boring, so she wanted to add some colors. Jaden laughed and told us to follow him upstairs to study. Katie obviously wasn't happy with my ad-lib. She frowned at me and mouthed, "What the heck was that?" And I just gave her 2 big thumbs up and acted as if I was being an amazing wing girl. We sat around a desk, and Jaden started to explain physics stuff. This was so easy, but Katie kept leaning in closer to him and asked him some dumb questions while playing with her hair. I swear, the hair twirling was an act, but her not understanding any of these symbols was real. I soon got tired of playing dumb, so I jumped in and explained it instead. And Jaden looked impressed. Okay, this was fun. Katie shot me a dirty look. Gabby, don't you have a manicure at 5? Then she kicked my leg under the desk.
Stay. You're acing it.
Jaden grinned at me.
Those nails can wait. You're only 1 F away from Dad's tantrum, and I don't want to witness that.
Then he turned to Katie.
You should encourage each other to do better.
Then we went back to the lesson. I could tell how furious Katie was, as she was crumpling up the edges of a page on her notepad. I was secretly celebrating my little win. Then my phone rang. It was Dylan, and he sounded kinda mad. Oh my God. I'd totally forgotten that Gabby had told me about today's big date at a fancy restaurant for their 6th-month anniversary. Oops. I didn't want to go on a date with Dylan and leave Jaden here with Katie. Ugh! But I couldn't let Gabby down, so I quickly changed outfits, grabbed the gift she'd bought for him, then left. I arrived at the restaurant to see him lingering about outside, looking sulky. So I had to make up some excuse. Sorry, honey, I just wanted to look good for you. Then gave him a kiss on the cheek. Yuck. He was wearing even more cologne this time. Inside, I feigned interest in the menu so I wouldn't have to talk to him. I didn't want to mess my sister's relationship up, but I had nothing in common with this guy. Suddenly, his phone rang out. Hang on, was that a Youngblood song?
Sorry, babe. I forgot to put it back on silent.
I love Youngblood. His new song is so catchy. We should make a TikTok to it. He gave me an odd look.
But you always hate this kind of music.
Thinking quick, I replied, I guess your music tastes must be rubbing off on me. He looked extra happy, then took my hand, which startled me a little, but that was a good icebreaker. I felt much more comfortable talking to him after that. Okay, so regardless of his clothes and hair, he was actually a pretty sweet guy, and it was obvious that he really cares for Gabby. We had a lot of fun, and then he dropped me off at home. And obviously, like any couple that had been dating for months, he went in for a kiss. And I started to panic again. For your information, I haven't had my first kiss yet. And I didn't want it to be with my sister's boyfriend. I gave him a kiss on the cheek again, then fake coughing. I told him the cold the other day hadn't worn off yet, and I didn't want to pass it to him. Phew. Luckily, he bought it. Then he just gave me a kiss on the forehead and wished me goodnight. Whew! It was such a day. I threw myself onto the bed and was about to call Gabby for an update when Katie called. She moaned at me for being unhelpful on her date. Then she demanded I rearrange another one to make it up to her. So, another tutor session with math? I suggested, with zero effort whatsoever. No thanks, I'm tired of it. Gabby, you literally did no help today. This is the chance to redeem yourself. I trust you. Then she hung up, leaving me at a dead end. So I phoned Gabby for advice, and she told me to book them at a date at Jaden's favorite restaurant or something. Then, Gabby must have noticed how unenthusiastic I sounded. She added, Oh, and Nancy, I know Katie loves to do the whole mean girl act, but underneath it all, she's actually pretty sensitive and has always been a good friend to me. So please make this work for her. Okay. So I needed to be less Nancy and more Gabby, as Katie deserved to have a loyal, caring best friend. So I made a reservation, sent Katie the time and place, then told Jaden about it. And now I just sit back and let them meet up and flirt and... I mean, there's nothing I could do. It's not like I was going to stalk them or anything. But yeah, that's exactly what I ended up doing. I didn't mean to, but the thought of them being together just driving me nuts. So there I was, strategically placing myself behind a pillar in the restaurant, trying to stalk them. Then all of a sudden, someone threw an apron at me.
What are you doing? The place is packed and you decide to just stand here flirting with the pillar, or what? Get to work!
I turned to see the waiter who had just talked to me rush off to take another order. Wait a minute, did he just think I was a waitress because my shirt looked similar to their uniform? If so, then Let the fun begin. I quickly put on the apron, lowered my hat, and hovered around the kitchen window, trying to find Jaden and Katie's order. There it was. Now, let's add extra spice on Katie's ravioli. It didn't take long for their food to come out, and Katie started coughing like crazy, having a taste of her food. Ha! But joke on me, that only gave her a platform to act up and make Jaden take better care of her. He even held a forkful of his steak out to her, and I watched her lean in and eat it. Ugh! Later on, when the waiter walked away with their dessert order, I waited for a sec before running after him and said, "Hey, Table 17 just asked to change the chocolate cake to peanut butter cheesecake. They just told me." Then he just fixed the order without a doubt. Katie seemed to hate peanut butter so much. She made sure to let everybody know that every time we went to eat something. Well, Jaden loved PB&J, so by this way, he would see what an annoying, picky eater she was. After that, I lingered at a corner, pretending to wipe tables to stay out of sight, while keeping an eye on them. And as expected, Katie jumped off her seat and started yelling at the waiter after taking a sniff of the cake. The waiter looked puzzled, then looked around, searching for something. Suddenly, he pointed at me. "Hey, are you sure about the order? You were the one who told me that they switched the cakes." I froze as all the eyes were now on me. "Gabby, I can't believe this! Why are you ruining this for me?" Katie charged towards me. You know how bad my peanut allergy is. I could have ended up in the hospital. I don't know you anymore, Gabby." Then she stormed off. Oh my God, I really didn't know that. I didn't mean to hurt Katie that way. Jaden then quickly paid the bill, then grunted at me. "We're going home." He didn't say a single word to me on the way home. He just went straight to his room and slammed the door. I stood outside of his room and kept on apologizing. He finally opened it and yelled at me. "What's up with you? You've reached new levels of weird lately?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "I thought you'd finally changed for the better. But, well, turns out you're still the same spoiled brat you always were. Just do whatever you want without a second thought." "No, it's not like that. It was an accident. Oh, really? Then what is it like?" "It's like I have a crush on you, Jaden. I just can't bear seeing you with other girls." "What? Are you crazy? This better not be some kind of prank, Gabby. You're my sister." "No, I'm not. I'm not Gabby. I'm her twin, Nancy. And FYI, both Gabby and I aren't your biological sister either." Jaden looked at me, jaw dropped. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Gabby, what did you just say?" It was Mum. She looked so perplexed, and tears were already welling up. We had an emergency family meeting, where I told them all about my chance meeting with Gabby, switching places, and how she believed she was adopted, as they favored Jaden over her. So now she's with our biological parents in the countryside. To say they looked shocked was an understatement. Then Mum took my hand and said, "Sweetie, it's time you learned the truth." Then she told me how 12 years ago, during a family picnic, I wandered off and got lost. They tried searching for me, but to no result. But now, here I was. I'd found my way back to them. They also mentioned that it wasn't that they loved Jaden more. They were stricter with Gabby because she was rebellious when it came to her studies. "It pains me to know she thinks we love her less." Dad sighed, then Mum turned to me, cupped my face with her hands. "Oh God, my poor Abby. I can't believe you're here with us now." "Abby? So my real name was Abigail?" I choked up. Things then got emotional. There was a lot of hugging and sobbing. It was an emo overload. "So let's go pick up your sister, shall we?" Dad patted on my shoulder and told everyone to get changed. Then we hit the road right away. It may have already been 10 p.m., but this couldn't wait. On the ride, I started to calm down and let the truth get to me as I took one good look at everyone. So these were my real parents? And that meant Jaden was my real brother too? Man, now that's embarrassing. I pulled out my phone to give Gabby a heads up that we were coming, and didn't forget to add a, "You are so not going to believe what actually happened." I was expecting her to call me right back, but instead, she just replied with, "I bet you I will believe it." Huh? We arrived at my house, and my parents rushed out to me and hugged me tightly. It turns out, they figured out that Gabby was an imposter pretty quickly, but she's still enjoying this farming life so much that she decided to hang around a bit more before telling me. Sorry, Nancy, but it didn't take long for Mom and Dad to notice how her daughter suddenly doesn't know how to fry an egg anymore. Then everybody laughed. We all squeezed around the kitchen table and caught up on everything. Oh boy, it got emotional again. I think we all cried enough tears to fill a lake. It was so good to see my parents again. Even though they weren't my biological parents, they loved and cared for me, despite all the money struggles. Now that we're reunited, I've officially moved back in the city with Gabby, and we now go to school together. We still come out to the countryside every weekend and spend some quality time with my adoptive parents, who, turns out, Gabby loves just as much as I do. And thanks to my biological parents, they now have the bountiful ranch they always dreamed of. It all fell into place in the end, and I couldn't be happier. Except for the little awkward moments with Jaden. Thinking back about that, it was so dumb. Maybe I'll help Katie properly this time, as, to be honest, they'd make a pretty cute couple. But she better set me up with another cute guy in return.
This shift was boring. So as I handed the 2 coffees over to the girl, I couldn't help but daydream about what to have for lunch. Excuse me, why the attitude? The girl sounded annoyed. Then before I could say anything, she shouted, "I want to speak to your manager." The boy next to her tried to keep her calm and asked her to go outside first. Then he said to me, "I'm sorry about my sister." I mumbled, "It's okay," as I handed him $20 change. "Oh, just keep it," he smiled. But then he started apologizing, took the change, then left. What just happened? I took out my phone to check my face. Oh, great. I looked like I was sucking on wasps. And all because I was thinking about whether I should have pasta or a sandwich. Well, to be honest, what just happened wasn't new to me, but it never seemed to get any easier. Let me start at the beginning. So, I'm Isabelle. I just graduated from high school and was soon to be a freshman at college. Ever since I can remember, my parents, friends, and teachers always asked me the same questions, such as, "What's wrong?" and "Why the long face?" When I told them that I was fine, they would always be like, "Are you sure?" Or, "If there's a problem, you need to tell us, okay?" Oh, it was so frustrating. There was even this one time where my teacher had to stop in the middle of a lesson to ask me not to look at her like that because my stare made her feel uncomfortable. What? I was just really focused. Then I eventually found out in high school. It was on a normal sunny day. I was sitting at the bus stop with my best friend Jocelyn when some guy came over and asked for directions. I looked up and the guy got startled and began to stutter. "Oh, sorry for bothering you." And then he left in a hurry. Huh? This was so confusing. He didn't even give me a chance to get a word out. So I turned to Jocelyn and asked if she might know what the guy's problem was. Maybe it's because you look like you want to kick his butt. Then she told me how everyone at school thought I was an arrogant snob. What? That was ridiculous. Why would they think of me like that? I asked her this, and she took out a mirror and held it to my face. Well, see it for yourself. I took a deep look in the mirror, and oh my God, she was right. I did look a bit moody, but I swear I wasn't. Not at all. The next day, Jocelyn sent me a link to an article. It was about people having a naturally grumpy face, also known as resting bee face, aka RBF. You know the word. No wonder nobody likes me and wants to be friends with me. Well, except Jocelyn, thank God. she saw beyond my sullen-looking exterior. I wanted college to be different, so I was determined to say goodbye to snobby Isabelle and say hello to happy, joyful Isabelle. I just needed to smile all the time. Sounds easy, right? So on my first day at college, I walked into the lecture hall with the biggest smile fixed on my face. I hoped I looked friendly and not like that creepy cat from Alice in Wonderland. But then my smile immediately vanished when I saw him. It was the guy who wanted to tip me $20 and then ran off with it. Ugh, why was he here? I was trying to come across as a sweet, friendly girl, and I didn't need him spreading rude rumors about me. So the easiest solution was to avoid this guy as much as possible. Only the universe had other ideas, and I found myself stuck doing a group project with him. Ugh, great. We all sat in a circle, and I found out he's called Carter. Our group leader, Carla, assigned each of us a task. While listening to her, I tried to hold my smile as brightly as I could. Keep it steady, steady, I thought to myself over and over. But you know what? Fake smiling is hard work, and it causes serious face ache. Then my cheek started twitching, so to avoid looking like a weirdo, I decided to take a break from smiling. And that's when Carla noticed me and asked, "Did I say something wrong?" Everybody was gawping at me. I could feel myself blushing. Great, now I probably resembled a grumpy tomato. That's when Carter spoke up. "Just continue. We'll say if anything's unclear." Thank you, Carter. Now, I know how Lois Lane felt after being rescued by Superman. This felt even more intense than the movie. And oh, he was actually kinda cute too. I felt a little bummed out after the group meeting. All I wanted to do was make some friends, but I'd already given Carla the wrong impressions about myself. I'm not a big party goer, but perhaps the big freshman party happening on Friday would be a good place to make friends, right? Feeling down, I sat on the side of the bench by the college sports field and just looked up to the sky. Then I noticed Carter playing soccer with some guys. So I watched him play for a bit. It could have been the lighting, or the fact he looked so hot when sweaty, but I couldn't take my eyes off him. Maybe I should try talking to him. The next day, I walked into the lecture hall and spotted Carter sitting alone reading a book. This was my chance. I could sit next to him and start a convo. Okay, Isabelle, keep it cool. Oh no, not cool. Cool means arrogant. Keep it happy. You got this. Smile on. Check. Hi, is this seat? Carter looked up. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know this was your seat. Then he gathered his stuff and moved to another table. What? Ugh, curse you, RBF! I wasn't giving up this easily, so I searched online and read that makeup could help fix my situation. So, I applied makeup around my mouth and eyes, then went to my lecture. Only during the group discussion, Carter whispered to me, "Are you sick? As you look a bit pale. Why don't you go home? I can take notes for you." After hearing him say that, I actually did feel a bit sick. Sick of the constant failure. But wait, this Friday was the party. That would be my last opportunity to make friends and talk to Carter. I'd never been to a party before, mainly because no one had ever invited me to one. Pretty sure they thought my grumpy look would kill the mood. So I spent ages deliberating on an outfit, opting for a bright-colored dress to make me look more cheerful. As I walked into the party, I couldn't stop shaking. Everyone looked like they were having a great time, while I just looked like a grumpy kid longing for their mama. It's okay, Isabelle. Keep calm, I told myself. I just needed a couple drinks to boost my confidence. So, I got a couple of shots from the bar, and wow, I immediately felt like a whole new person. I was about to bravely talk to some girls when suddenly a guy came over to me and said, "Hey, looks like you're having a bad time. If you don't like these things, I think you should just go home. It's okay." Great. If even alcohol couldn't help me, then what else could? I lost all interest in making friends, so I decided to take the random guy's advice and leave. Everyone would have far more fun without having to see my moody face anyway. As I hurried out of there, I heard someone shout, "Isabelle, wait up!" I turned around and saw that it was Carter. He caught up with me and asked why I was leaving so early. I muttered out how partying wasn't really my thing and I'd rather hang out somewhere else. Yeah, I'm not so keen on them either. Can I come with you? I froze for a minute, but I guess he presumed I was angry with him as he apologized and went to leave. Oh, hell no. No way am I gonna let him slip away again. So I said quickly, "Of course you can come!" But it came out as loud screaming. The poor guy must have felt like a tiger was growling in front of his face. Well, at least he was still coming with me, right? Even if it was out of fear, he looked a little unsure as I led him toward one of my favorite places, which was underneath this bridge, but when he saw all of the awesome graffiti, he seemed to be more at ease. He had fun, looking from one piece to the next. Then we started talking, and turns out we could get on pretty well. We soon became close friends, and I even introduced him to Jocelyn. The more I spent time with Carter, the more I liked him, and I started to think that he liked me too. Don't ask me why. It's just a gut feeling. Then one day I opened the door to see Carter standing there with his huge bouquet and a cute gift box. Oh, sweet Lord, were they for me? I knew I needed to say something, so I mumbled out, "Who is that for?" Ouch. Did that sound a bit harsh? Should I ask again? And maybe with a softer voice and a smile. But before I could say anything, Carter replied, Oh, these are for Jocelyn. Can you please give them to her? Thanks. He handed me them, then ran off. What? Carter was in love with Jocelyn? But hey, it's no shocker that good things never happen to me, and someone with a naturally joyful look like her would get all the guys. Let's face it, who wants a mean-looking girlfriend? This sucked. After that, I purposefully avoided Carter, and we didn't talk at all for a week. It was all too much. So one day after lectures, I went to my happy place under the bridge. What? There was this new graffiti drawing. It was huge, ugly, and I think it was for me. As in dried, dripping letters, it said, "I love you, Isabelle." I stared at it open-mouthed. Was this someone's idea of a joke? Then someone came up alongside me. It was Carter. "It's not my finest work, but I tried," he said coyly. Huh? He did this, but why? Then he continued, "The flowers and gift were for you, but I thought you were annoyed, so I freaked out and said they were for Jocelyn. So afterward, I called her and told her the truth, and she said that you like me too." Now that explains the weird looks Jocelyn has been giving me. I was so having words with her later. You know, I drew that a week ago. I've been following you every day after college. Not in a creepy way. I just wanted to be here when you first saw it. And oh man, it was so worth it. Then he gave me the cutest smile and pulled me in for a hug. Oh, wow. This guy knew how to make a girl melt. And you know what? I was smiling, and I wasn't forcing it. So that's it. We became an official couple. Turns out he doesn't care if I have a RBF or not, as he took the time out to discover the real me. You should never judge a book by its cover, as you might miss out on the best adventure ever. So, if that girl or guy looks a bit miserable, then maybe you shouldn't rule them out as being arrogant and moody, and instead, give them a chance.